Oh, shit. Evening. That's one for all you tea drinkers out there. That was just me having a little pretend cuppa, actually. I did happen to take a little dip into some of the chat there, and I seen Helen was on the tea. Well done, Helen. It is a school night after all. Good evening. Happy New Year to you all. I'm gonna. I hope you can all hear and see me all right. This, for some reason, I'm not sure whether this. I think it's picking up okay. Yes. Good evening. Happy New Year, etc., etc. As I said to a few of you already, saying we're almost 3 weeks in, and Happy New Year seems a little redundant now. Does to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, I haven't been on since 2021. So Happy New Year to you. Cheers. I'm just going to jump into the chat. This is just drinks with friends again. It's the first one of the year, as I said. I have got plans, and I'll get back to it. Graham Horner in early days. Graham, good evening, buddy. Graham, had I been having another sample tonight, I was going to try your poor man's Longmorn, but I'll get to that at another date. It is a school night, and etc. Graham Horner, Donner past Tim, good evening, mate. Multi-mission, the same as in earlier, but I think I had to come and go, so he's off probably, but good to see him. And anyway, let's get down through the drams and draws. Tony, good evening, mate. I'll be touching on your sample in a minute. Pete Head Frank, how are you, my friend? Gavin, Radek, hello, Radek. Haven't seen in a while. Lee J, Neil Laverty, Neil, how are you, buddy? Let me see. It's all jumping. McCallum Fine and Rare. McCallum Fine and Rare, how are you? Doc, I haven't seen you in ages. As I say, I tend to, Mark Slinger, hello, I tend to miss out. Whiskey Straight Al, Greg's Whiskey Guide. I tend to miss out on some of, or a lot of the live streams at the moment because of the new job, etc. And we'll get on and move on to things like that. Anyway, where was I? I have a little Alan McLoughlin has just seen in as well. Yes, good evening. Yes, 2021. Say this is just drinks with friends tonight. Oh, I don't want to get caught up with you guys again. It feels like a lifetime. I know it's not a lifetime. I mean, it was actually only 3 weeks ago. The big live stream that I did with all those guests. Oh, it was mental. It took a couple of days to recover from that one. But man, I enjoyed it. I really did, and I can't thank everybody enough that joined in on that one. Des, good evening. So yeah, this was just, as I say, I haven't really got a chance to just come back on and say Happy New Year. I've got plans for this year, for 2021, and not really plans that when I say I've got plans for the live feed. I've got plans for my reviews. They're all pretty much planned out. Al, good evening. So yeah, there's quite a lot coming up. So I just seen the doc saying that he was around and he hadn't went anywhere. As I say, because I don't get a chance to see as many live streams as I used to, or be involved in as many live streams. Although hopefully that'll change. Hopefully this year I'll get a chance to get back in, certainly to Roy's, Greg throws quite a few of them, etc. So I would like to get back into these live streams and other people's live streams is what I mean, and just get back in and chatting to the community and get stuck in with you guys, because I miss the crack. The crack was always good. So I've probably said a few things there and said them, bypassed them. I've a tendency to do that. I'll maybe come back to them later, maybe not. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, is tell you what I'm sipping, and it's the Dubliner. This was sent to me. This was a sample sent to me by Tony Kane in here, although he will be in here as, yes, drams and draws. So Tony sent me this. This is from the Dublin Liberties Distillery. It's a 3-year-old where they tied up with Rascals Craft Brewing Company and and finished. And as I said, it's only a 3-year-old, but they finished in their coffee stout casks, barrels. So I've taken the Irish whiskey a bit again lately. As anybody's been watching my recent series, there's been a few Irish whiskies floating about again, and I've just now the reason why I don't review a lot of Irish whiskey at the minute is, and I've said this quite a bit, or who can't remember who used the terminology. Eric Waite in a live stream used the terminology and said that about Irish whiskey still being in the stage of puberty, and I thought it was a very clever way to put it. Obviously, Irish whiskey's been around for years, but it's when I say that, it's more just the fact of these new young distilleries bottling other people's spirit, or So yes, there will be Irish whiskey will have its time and its place again. We've talked about this in the past, but for now, I don't tend to dip. And I mean, this one here there's a good chance actually this is their own spirit. I didn't get that far because if it's only a 3-year-old whiskey, I would imagine it maybe has come from the Dublin Liberties distillery, possibly. I'm sure somebody will let me know that. Whiskey Graham, good to see you, Graham. Good evening, mate. And I really need to start and reach out to you guys again and just to get chatting, because say the year has come and went. 2020 was a bit of a mess. We discussed that before, but 2021 not looking much better at the minute. But let's just make of it what we can, shall we? So, from the Dublin Liberties, the Dubliner. Cheers to Tony Kane, Drams and Draws, for sending me this sample. And as I say, there is a good chance, I'm sure somebody can let me know, is this actually Dublin Liberty's own spirit? Or surely it's not at 3 years old. Surely it's not sourced from somebody else. One of the reasons why I wanted to try this was I tend not to be a big fan of beer finishes. I just find, I would say that I find them hit and miss. To be honest with you, I find them a bit miss and miss. I haven't really found a beer finish which I've been a massive fan of. Malt Punk's in Burned. How are you? Good to see you, my friend. So, as I say, this is that stout finish. So this is going to be the first dram of the night. It's going to be the first dram of the day, and cheers. And I hope if you're all having a dram, here's to your good health. On the nose, when I poured this at first, I thought, here we go again. It's another beer finish, and I don't really like it. Very massively floral off the nose, which I never really get for something that's a stout finish. There was another one. There's the Glendalough beer finish. I think it's a stout finish yet again. And it did this very flying, never took to it. 7-year-old. So it's still floral, but it's nice on the nose. Luna Aron's in. Luna, good evening. Happy New Year. Whiskey, or Graham Horner is saying that Copeland, I know Graham's a big fan of Copeland. And I'll be interested, yes, Graham, it'll be interesting to see how Copeland move on. Now, a lot of these distilleries, who were we talking about recently? Yes, I was speaking to Brendan Carty on the launch of the 7th bottle. They launched the 7th bottle of the Cologne Bonded series the other night, the 7th and the last of the Bonded series the other night. And the Belfast Whisky Club's Paul very kindly invited me in for that launch. And I was saying to Brendan about how good a year Cologne distiller. I actually said about how good the last couple of years have been for Cologne Distillery. And he actually reminded us that they've pretty much only been the last year. And I think it was just because so much had happened in the last year that we completely missed it. Black Barrel Sippers Club, good evening. Cheers. So yes, it is still a floral nose, something that I find kind of weird about especially stout finishes, because I've never found a floral nose on stout. So there must be something that stout casks give up, which suggests floral notes. But for 40%, yet again, probably chill, well, it is chill filtered, probably color added. It's not bad color, it's typical. It is a single malt. Slightly concerned about this, Tony, whenever I poured it at first, but now that it's been given a chance to settle a while, I must say the nose is thick. And yet again, this is something of a good finish on an Irish whiskey. If you can get a good thick nose and it's not thin and watery. Yeah. Well, the nose is kind of thick, but the palate ain't great. I'll no. So I just seen this one pop up. You're wearing or have tried a Natterjack cast strength? No. I have to say, Al, I'm not anybody else out there who is aware or has tried that. Give us a shout. Let us know what you're thinking. Alistair Gray in. Good evening, Alistair. The nose in this works well after time. Sweet, floral. Luna, well, I did see what you wrote after this, but I no, I was going to tell you what I'm dreaming, but I'm not. I'm not. There's what you meant to say. James Morgan, good evening. Sometimes whenever I come on to these live feeds and start a live stream, sometimes I feel like I am dreaming. I think to myself, what is this madness? What is but I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it. So yeah, this one, anybody who's just tuning in, wondering what I'm drinking, it is the from Dublin Liberties Distillery. Good nose, thick nose, floral, sweet, molasses. Good evening, buddy. But I have to say the palate then reverts back to type. It tends to go back a bit to what I thought it might have done. Graham, yeah. Honestly, I'm starting to wonder what I mean. 40%. I'm sort of changing my mind. I'm not changing my mind, but when 40% can be done right, it's all right. It's all right. I know I've maybe poo-pooed some of the Bushmills in the past and all that there, but when the flavor's there, it's not bad. But I have to agree with you too, because I think it's the ease at which they bottle at 40%. It's the fact that they almost all do it. And I think it's not a case of losing. It's not a case of losing flavor profile or anything like that. Well, I think that's part of the problem, actually. I think it is a case of losing flavor profile and stripping the thing down, remembering that an awful lot of those 40%ers are blends, Irish entry level blends. And it just, yeah. James Morgan, Do you know, it's so long from I've had the Jameson Stout, and I, in my memory, no, I would say this is not in that same ilk, because the Jameson Stout to me still has uh, a lot of that flavour that Middleton are famous for. A lot of those appley flavours, and just what a good one is. What a good Middleton one, or a good Jameson's is, even the Black Barrel, etc. And the Stout one was, to me, was the best of those releases. The beer releases, I wasn't a fan of their IPA ones, and even the Stout ones. Bit of a memory, just, but I haven't had it in ages. But this, no, I wouldn't say it's that much like it. Ruben Duff, good evening. This ain't bad. It ain't bad, and it wasn't. I don't think it was overly priced. I think that there was something around the €35 mark. Mm. Yeah, Graham, Whiskey Graham, I agree. 40% allows to keep the price, but it's whenever that price point creeps up at 40%, and it's whenever the price point creeps up, and yet again, back to Bushmills, the 16, the 21, etc. Releasing old whiskies bottled at 40%. I still think is there's a special place in hell for those people sometimes. But sorry, it's, yeah, as I say, we grumble about the 40%, but Richard Ignew, how's it going over there in Ontario, Mary Mucker? Richard, you haven't missed a whole lot. As I say, I've just been rambling on about this one, which is the Dubliner Beer Cast Series Coffee Stout from the Dublin Liberties Distillery down there in Dublin. Here's a word you'll understand, Richard. I've just been blethering. I've just been blethering for the last sort of 20 minutes, waiting for you to come up. So there you go. Now that you're here, we can get on with it. But yeah, I say, not bad. Billy Saunders, how's it going, my friend? So yeah, no, and actually, the longer I sit with it, the better it's actually getting. There's a slight bitterness in the finish, which I imagine is coming from the stout finish. I had a drop left in the bottle. I'm going to pour it into the glass and add some water and see what that does. There's somebody in the chat, and here's what I'm going to say about 40% whiskey, and Irish whiskey in particular. And this person actually gave me an education on, and I mean this most sincerely. Sorry, Stefan Novak just came in as well. Good evening, Stefan. And it's Gregoire, Greg's Whiskey Guide. I would have continued beating Irish whiskey producers for bottling at 40%, and almost it's almost just I just did this bee in my bonnet, but the safest way to say it about it. But I think this is where Gregoire steered me a bit, that there can still be quality at 40%. And when you get back into, especially when you get back into some of those older Bushmills bottled at 40%, the complexity of flavor is very much there, and definitely worth still looking at. So it's all right just to blow 40%ers out, but there's still some great ones. Mark's on his way. Mark, thanks for joining in, buddy. Cheers. Yeah, and I've just added a bit of water to this. 40%, a lot of people would say, nah, don't put water in at 40%. But I generally add water to everything just to see what it does. And weirdly, it's brought out the beer in this. Now, I know weirdly as well, I find more and more whiskey drinkers are not beer likers, are not beer drinkers, but I was a beer drinker first. And it's still the beer thing is, and now this beer, chocolate, and weirdly it's the coffee. what was it? I have to call that up again. Coffee stout, but there's a great chocolatey flavour. Nose off this now. Tony, if you're still, well, I think you're still in the chat. Let me know your thoughts on this. This is Tony shared me a sample of this, so. Weirdly, I think that little drop of water has helped. It's brought out the chocolate, it's brought out the beer. It's thin. It was thin anyway. Jeff Whiskey, good evening, mate. It was thin anyway, but it's brought out a lot of the intensity of flavour. Unfortunately, it's a bit thin in the palate, and adding water to it's thinned it further. But if you can put up with that thinness of palate, there's great spread of flavour with it. Yeah, I wouldn't have really been a fan of this initially, but now that it's had the chance of water in it and it's had a chance to settle, etc., I'm actually quite enjoying this. Helen, yeah, I know that it's weird. Pints, and as I said, that I always used to, and I mentioned this before, that beer and whiskey were two things with me that went hand in hand. A beer, and I talked about a chaser, or a pint and a wee one, or whatever. And it would just, to me, the two went hand in hand. And I still love a nice bottle of IPA and a dram, or a pint of Guinness and a Blackbush, something like that. And I think there's definitely a place for beer in this world along with whiskey. I think the two of them can work very, very well together. And it's weird. I just find it very strange whenever I get into this community a bit further and realized how many people, an awful lot of people come by and says, no, I don't drink beer, don't like beer, never was a beer drinker. And I used to just think that surely it was almost a progression, that you started with beer and then moved on to whiskey. But then that's because I'm Irish. I think I'll put it down to that. I'm not saying that we're all alcoholics, but it's just, I think it's the way, I think it's almost the way you're brought up. If you decide to start and go to a pub, whatever, you generally don't start on whiskey. Awful lot of chocolate going on this now. Lots and lots of, and it's not even chocolate, it's like cocoa powder that you would make hot chocolate out of, or you know. At 40%, the heat is still there. There's still plenty going on in it. Yeah, Tony, I'm glad to hear that, mate. Sorry. Yeah, as I say, thank you for sharing this, Tony. It's not one that I would have bought. It's definitely not. And as I asked, or as I said earlier on, if anybody knows, I'm imagining that this is Liberty's Distillery's own spirit. If it's only a 3-year-old whiskey, surely, as I said earlier, they're not going to source and bottle at 3 years. They've been around longer than that, I think. Yeah. And that's the other thing about beer. I realized the other night I was in the Belfast Whisky Club tasting after the Kilhone distillery launch, and they had Paul from the Belfast Whisky Club fires out. There was 7 samples, and there were good, healthy samples. This is actually the size of, because there's still 2 left over, because I made it to 5 in 4 hours. It took us 4 hours to get the 5 whiskies down us, and we were enjoying it. David Owen, good evening. We were enjoying it. It was all going well, but 4 hours in, 5 whiskies, and these whiskies were stretching out well, and I had to give up. I just couldn't cope any longer, and I knew I had to work the next day as well, so I had to give up relatively early. But I got up relatively early the next day after 5 drams the night before and felt fine. I stopped early, drank plenty of water, went to bed, felt grand. I know for a fact, had I had a beer in the middle of that I would have suffered the next day from it. This is what sort of still messes with me, and there's an awful lot of my age, I would imagine, plays into that too. But I'm still quite amazed how one can sit and this is the thing that people who are new to whiskey, who don't drink whiskey, or who don't drink whiskey in the way that that we do, that us people in this community and whatnot do, that you could take your time over it, you know. You see, Tim, I was watching, I totally agree with what you're saying there. I was watching a cookery program earlier on, and it was about losing weight in cooking. And this guy was making a curry, something that our friend Hell's Wade in here is a good fan of, and often see minis of curry that they make. They always look lovely. And this guy was making this healthy curry, lamb, I think it was lamb buna. And I'm sorry, I couldn't. And I said to my wife, that's lovely. What do you have with that? A beer. As a matter of fact, probably a couple of beers. I could not sit down to a curry and drink water with it or anything else. It would have to be a nice cold lager. So that's what just brings that down, isn't it? Anyway, just thought I'd share that with you. Yeah. Yeah, this definitely isn't bad. I seen somewhere, 10-year-old single malt. Oh, yeah, I read something about that one. All about that. No, I mean, I would recommend this. I actually got chatting to a lady recently who lived in the in Liberties in Dublin, and I thought, what? I mean, the Liberties is just rising now. It's another one of these. It's the teeling. It's coming out of the ashes. Anybody who's been down to St James's Gate, down to the Guinness factory or Guinness brewery, all that sort of place, you're all down sort of Liberties direction. So it's always worth a visit. Dublin and I have mentioned, maybe mentioned in the past, Dublin and I don't mix. There's many a story there as to why Dublin and I don't mix, but I'll not go into it here because I'm sober. That's why I won't go into it here. Some night you get me. Yeah. And yes, that's what I was talking about a minute ago. I mean, half an hour I've been sipping this, and I drank it quite a bit quicker than I would generally would because I want to get to another sample. But as I say, 5 whiskies, 5 samples. These are samples, mind you, drams over 4 hours. It's not difficult. So if you can, if you can drag them out, make them last, hangovers shouldn't be an issue. Just take your time over them, enjoy them. That's my advice to you. Glenarn, are the Liberties still dodgy? It's Dublin. That's all I'm going to say about that. You can read into that what you will. It's Graham, too much Bucky and Feathers. Well, Bucky. Anybody wonder what Bucky is? It's Buckfast, which is a fortified wine. and it ain't pleasant. Oh no, it ain't. And it's something which in certain parts of Scotland and certain parts of here in Northern Ireland would nearly be considered a delicacy. I think it's called, is it Lurgan champagne or something they call it. So, you know, what did I see? Tim saying, am I not allowed? In Dublin, I've been to Dublin many times. I'll give you a wee bit of a why Dublin night. It just doesn't. Every time I go to Dublin, something goes wrong. Something goes wrong every time. And I mean, I'm talking 10, 12 times. I'm not saying that, I've been twice and something went wrong. Every time I go to Dublin, something goes wrong. So I made the decision a few years back to never go to Dublin again. But I mean, let's face it, I'll be in Dublin at some point because you can't not go to Dublin. And I know people love it and all that there. And I think part of my issue was that when I'm talking about the trouble I had, many of my problems with Dublin happened in my younger days. And I wasn't just as hard to explain. I wasn't just as settled as I am now. Should we say that? That's probably a good way to explain it. Just as settled as I am now. So as I say, I would probably go. Well, I will go back to Dublin for the simple fact that I mean, let's face it. There's whiskey festivals down there. The whiskey, Dublin and I didn't mix, but now that the whiskey thing and all that there, I would dare say that I'll go back. And funny, Frank said it there, Petehead. Yeah, it's me. It is me. But the problem is me and Dublin just don't mix. As I said, we'll sort it out. Dublin and I will sort this out, and we'll get over it. Anyway, moving on, and I'm going to find something else to dip into here, and it's one that there it is, the Ardnamurchan. Now let's get this right. I'm going to say AD 920-01. That's what I'm going to call it. What I was thinking about this earlier on, this was shared to me by Alan McLoughlin. Thank you very much, Alan. And this was an eagerly anticipated inaugural single malt from the Ardnamurchan distillery there on the west coast of Scotland. So far west is it that it's almost overhanging the Isle of Mull. Yes, I had to put the geography in my head there. It's still owned by the Adelphi Group. And as I say, this was highly anticipated last year, eagerly anticipated as their inaugural single malt release. If I drift off, I'm not drifting off because I'm drifting off because Roy can do this well. I can't, in that I haven't got a split screen here. I've got one big screen. So when I've got my phone sitting open in front of me, and when somebody mentions my name, then so as I know that somebody has mentioned my name, that it'll flag up red, and I can actually see. So I'm reading it sort of off my phone, and then jumping up here to actually read what was said, and it's kind of difficult just to keep. Yeah. There you are. Sorry, the doc. There's a good chance. Yes, it's the inaugural release. Maybe, as I say, all I seen it was the AD ad night, and the thing was, then I was looking at it and going, there's too many Celtic names, and let's give it a good old Celtic name again that nobody can understand. And this time they just fired letters and numbers at us, which to me is actually worse. So, but I was very, very glad, very pleased, delighted when Alan sent this to me, because it was kind of out of the blue, I think, at the time. And I wasn't, I wasn't expecting this, and especially the fact that everybody was. It's another one of those ones. There was a couple of Scotch distilleries last year, and as much as the Irish distilleries were firing off left, right, and centre and popping up every day, new Scotch distilleries were coming about, but I think a few of them, as much as they did get established and they had established themselves, it all fell a bit quiet last year, obviously for reasons. And the likes of these guys and even Wolfsburn and all were making a big noise last year, and it was great. It's great to see. I do like my Scotch whiskey, as you know. So, Whiskey Graham, good night, my friend. I didn't realise you actually had the C word, as we call it, and I haven't been speaking to you in a day or two. So, listen, I hope you get well soon, buddy. I really do. It's an evil code. There you are, Doc. Maybe it is an evil code. Maybe trying to tell us something. Maybe, yeah. Anyway, that's a weirdly bright nose. This is 50% peated, 50% unpeated malt, I believe. And wasn't this the first? It's 6 year old. This was the first one in 2014 bottle. Then last year, obviously. I see, Graham. Sorry, this was the bit, and I know other guys out there who've been the same. And this is what concerns me most about catching it. God forgive me for saying it, that people were dying of this, and I'm worried about losing my sense of taste and smell. But it's just one of those things. And I know Tony in here had it, lost his taste and smell. Scott from the Scott's Test Dummies, I know, suffered very badly with it. And it just, as I say, people are dying. I'm just, anyway. Alan, cheers, my friend. Yeah, I sort of took it for granted that was sort of pardon me, that was pretty much what the numbers were, and the AD, as the AD, just I don't know, but it's a weird bright. Yeah, it's a bright. There is that hint of, and I'm not going to say smoke because it's not smoke. Well, it is smoke, but it's peat smoke, and I mean, people talk about this. People talk about iodine. They talk about sticking plasters, band-aids, whichever you wish to call them, medicinal notes, creams, etc. But I still, I challenge those, and I've done this here. Now, it's not so easy elsewhere in the world. It's not something that carries over all over the world. But certainly here in Northern Ireland, because it's easy got, probably a lot of parts of Scotland, those people that really won't give the peat a go. And the only reason to say this is I've had friends that have challenged me this, that won't, as I say about the bandy, is that basically the TCP thing and all that there about peated whiskies. And I did this with one friend in particular. I set a challenge to him and said, "No, trust me, it smells like peat smoke from a peat fire." And he, all right, whatever, and didn't, because he wouldn't touch peated whiskey. And he said he was leaving his mother's or grandmother's one day, and she had a peat fire burning, and whatever way the wind caught the smoke, he got a full face full of it. And he came back to me and said, "You are 100% right. That's what I was smelling, was peat smoke." And it changed his notion. He actually bought a cheap bottle of some peated, and but really enjoyed it with this then in mind, that it was no longer TCP, it was no longer iodine sticking plasters, it was peat smoke he could smell, and it just changed his whole opinion. Malt Punk's off. Oh, sorry, Raddick's off. Sorry, Raddick. Good night, my friend. Yeah, the longer this sits, the more that peat smoke starts to come forward. And yet again, chocolate. I'm getting a hint of chocolate in this as well. I don't think that one will be missed, Tony. Kilkenny Doublewood never really impressed me much. Yeah, I do like this. It's a brave step for anyone now, isn't it? Starting a distillery, especially now. And a lot of these guys would have been in the process of doing so, and you can't back out then. That's a really good nose. It's like a lot of them. It takes a while, doesn't it, to acclimate to it. When I nosed this here at first, it was sort of sharp. It was, yeah, there wasn't, it was weirdly not focusing in any direction. Anybody else out there's had this? Let me know what you think. Yeah, yeah, I do like that. Hmm. Creamy. Yep. That light peated malt. This is only what 46.8%, but it feels an awful lot stronger than that. Sam Clarkson. What's he saying about Pete? Hmm. Anybody out there want to suggest to Sam what he goes for next? Price wise, if I mean price wise, obviously I imagine without knowing what the McNamara is off the top of my head, but at cast strength, I would imagine is probably twice or three times the price of the wee beastie. So if it were me, I would suggest the wee beastie. Where are you? I mean, I'm taking it then that you have had and like peated whiskies if you're moving on, because I certainly wouldn't be starting a peated journey with them. But you sound like you've had it before. Yeah. Mm. Hmm. Yeah, Tim. It's something very very much of the still the Irish elk, and I mean you sort of have to go around almost museums and stuff now for that, the old peat burning and etc. But if I can get my hands on some peat, freshly cut peat, well, say freshly cut, obviously you give it a chance to dry. I still like some in the fire. It burns well, creates a great heat, and when you get outside and just smell that smoke in the air, it's incredible. Yeah, I was very appreciative of that, Alan. It's you know because it was whenever, as I say, people were rushing to buy this. It went very quickly, and it's something that I find quite incredible about the community, that I've noticed that when you get one that you really like, I think most of us are nearly the same. You get one when you get one that you really like, you tend to want to share it rather than drink it because you want other people to enjoy it and see. I know I want to know what they think. Or sometimes, not always, because sometimes whenever you get one that you've chased down, you don't want to be just giving it all away again either. But oh, sorry, I didn't actually read that before when I. Well, cheers, Tony. I appreciate that. Hadn't actually read that before I clicked it up. I just seen, but no, peated whiskey, as I say, there's definitely a place for it, time and a place, and if you can, I think if you can approach it in the right way, and for me, that was, I think I said it before that I never really had an issue with peated whiskey in the first place. Luckily, I just sort of fell into it and quite enjoyed it straight out the bat. I mean, going in with the Taliskers and Kalilas and stuff like that, it felt like natural progression. Oh, this is great. This is great. It's to say that peat then starts to lend itself to a chocolate note. Mm. And it's not. I'm surprised how much the peat has come forward in it. Yet again, I was gonna, but I'm only having two tonight, so don't tell anybody. Because I want to put that, I want to top that up and add some water to see what it does to it yet again. Ah, so there you go, Sam. You had already, you had already done it. Yeah, Alan, I read that something was it Norway or something like that. I read that this Ardnamurchan still showing up in one of the European countries. 100% agree, Lunaran. Lechic 10-year-old cannot beat it. Really, really hard to whack. And Tony, yeah, that I think this is part of the issue sometimes that when we go in early with a really, because Lefroy still when people talk about TCP in regards to peated whiskey, Lefroy is actually the first one that comes to mind for me. Because I can see where they're coming from. I mean, obviously there is a something good on there. Prime Whiskey, good evening, buddy. Oh no, I really do like that. I really, if you did get your hands on a bottle of that, well done. That's I'm going to add. That would have been about half a teaspoonful. I generally tend to add a wee touch more just to get it to open up. Say 46.8%, but it punches above that. Yeah, no, that's a really nice nose because they've balanced it out. There's no, sorry, that skipped forward from where I wanted. Sorry, Frank. Yeah, I want to say, yeah, glad you're enjoying it now. Glad you're enjoying it. That Jameson Black Barrel, I'd said before, if anybody can get it, it's definitely worth a go at the right price. There's quite a lot of, wasn't there quite a lot of maturation in this? I think there was bourbon and sherry maturation in this. I'm sure somebody will keep me right there. Yeah. Sorry, molasses. TCP is pretty much when they're talking about iodine and stuff like that. There, it's a antiseptic liquid, and we tend to forget over here that that it's not widely available. Everybody will have their own version of it, I imagine. Peter Box, good evening, buddy, and still able to get that Ardnamurchan. Well, Peter, $100 Canadian. And I'm going to actually reach out yet again and say to Alan, yeah, because that's Alan's in here with so there was the price. It actually sold, Alan, if you don't mind me asking. What's he saying here? It varies here depending on the is that auction price? Because what was the, if you don't mind me asking, Alan, can you remember what you paid for it? Because I didn't think it was that dear. Looking back, retrospectively, I think, remember looking back, it wasn't for, especially for an inaugural release, it wasn't too badly priced. 100 to 200 euros on whiskey base. It's, you know, because the reason, oh, Vin's in. Good evening, Vin. Hope you're well. For something that was, I'm even starting to get wild mint. Vin, just, or anybody else that's joined in, on the last year's Ardnamurchan, and I'm still trying to work this out. Is it? I think it's AD 92001. Aye, so it's yeah. That's what I'm going to go with that. Yeah, it's definitely, as I said, this just keeps giving. Is that wild mint? That's what it's like. It's not just mint, wild mint. What did I? Sorry, yeah, I had to risk that, or I had to read that, Graham. Yeah, I know. Probably should be. Yeah, 58. Yeah, that's Peter. I'm going to suggest that is actually a very good price for that. Now, it's still 100 Canadian dollars. That's not, you know, it's not just a giveaway, but uh, and I'm gonna say something which the hate could start flying straight away. I mean, even at $100 for what it's selling at here on the secondary market, it's, you know, if you did decide you wanted a ball to keep, it's never going to lose its money, I would suggest. There was, I believe, it was a relatively small run, wasn't it? It wasn't a, you know, was it not? I think it was in the thousands anyway. Mm. Tim, resist, my friend, resist. I have to openly admit that I don't think I have bought a bottle of whiskey since probably October of last year. Shock horror. I just, oh, there could be an actual, oh, sorry, I've done it again. And again. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. Well, I mean, that could be very true, Doc. You are the Doc, after all. If anybody's going to suggest that that's what the TCP is, I believe it. Hmm. Hmm. It's incredibly, yet again, remembering this is their first big release. So for that, this ain't bad. This is, and I would go further than to say it ain't bad. This is good. That water really ramped up the peat, but it's been, because it's only 50% peated malt and 50% non-peated malt, there's enough roundness and balance that as much as the peat ramps up, it also brings up vanillas and as I said earlier on, I think there's some sherry maturation in this. That's only, remember, it's only 6 years old. But yeah, very, very nice whiskey for something so young. Hmm. Pleasantly surprised and very, very, very happy with that. Thanks again, Alan, for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Here's the other problem now. I've got the taste for it. Oh, school night. I keep reminding myself it's a school night. Mm. Yeah, very good indeed. Anyway, look, moving on. Let's go back into the chat. I've been trying to keep in the chat as much as possible. Very difficult to drink and see what's going on in here at the same time. Yes, the potential is great, Alan. I totally agree, and you know, it's good to see young new distilleries still capable of this great stuff. There really is. Um, but you see, the thing is, it does hurt, Tony. This is the problem. It hurts when 6:30 in the morning comes around. Is anybody else? And I'm actually going to wrap this up pretty early tonight, guys, because I do have an early start at the minute. But I was going to ask that: did the buying continue? Anybody this side of the water? And there's a few of us in here: Tony and Graham and Neil was in earlier. Whiskey Graham was in earlier. We're now in a situation where now I know there are those of you out in the world and people probably it's not a bad thing that and I've heard people saying it before, pardon me, that Amazon don't, America say Amazon don't sell alcohol, but they did sell it here too. I mean, they sell it in the UK. You can buy alcohol and it's some great deals, and I know Ralphie has made his made himself clear about how he thinks about it. Which personally I don't get. Now, and I don't want to get into this. This is probably a subject for a time whenever I have plenty of time to talk about it. But it's shop locally and spend the money, etc. locally and wherever you're buying your booze. But when it's ridiculous, I mean, when you can buy a bottle of something for £30, for example, and you go to your local whiskey merchant and they're selling it for £50, which is happening. This is what was happening between Amazon and the local suppliers. And now, currently, here in Northern Ireland, we've had this cut off because of Brexit and because of paperwork, Amazon have stopped sending alcohol to Northern Ireland. Tim Allett, Tim, were you in all night? I haven't seen you. So this is, well, I had stopped buying and I hadn't stopped for a reason. I just stopped because I had enough. I've plenty to review. I've got plenty in the cabinets. So there was no need to continue buying. I hadn't anything that I was aiming on, anything in the radar that I was in a mad panic to get. So I just didn't really buy anything there for the last few months. And as I say, now we've been cut off from sales, currently cut off from sales on Amazon. It's left a bit of a bitter taste, I have to say, because I just don't. It's a paperwork exercise, as far as I can tell. The only reason to stop sending to Northern Ireland is because they would have to fill out the paperwork. Good night, David Owen. Thank you for joining us, buddy. So, and as I say, it's this is probably a conversation that I should have started or kept for another time. But I'm sure there's guys in here who I know there's guys in here living here in Northern Ireland, etc., that I'm sure are feeling it as well, because local suppliers. Here's one for you. Here's an example. Okay. Let me see. I bought the whiskey that I'm reviewing this week. You'll see on Wednesday is, and I'll give this one away. I don't really care. Is Bushmills 2008 Muscatel cask. Ven, I'm actually glad to hear you saying that, but I mean, sometimes I think we just have to take stock, don't we? Literally, and go, look, with enough, we can start again. But I bought, and I couldn't believe this myself, Bushmills Distillery, 40-minute drive up the road. Okay. They released this 2008 as part of the Causeway. When they released their Causeway Coast collection last year, they released the two. There was a few of them dotted around the world. I think that they released for certain parts. There was certainly one, I think, released for France, I think, and other parts. Oh, shit. Whew. Nearly spilled some whiskey there for a moment. Yes, and but they released two for the Irish market: the 1995 Malaga cask and that 2008 Muscatel. So I was able, yet again, Tony Drams and Draws in here very, very kindly let me know. I didn't realize Irish Drams were doing a pre-release or pre-sale on them, and it was, this was brilliant. So I was actually able to get a couple of bottles. But I bought Irish. Now, what do you call them again? I actually said it's Irish Drams. Is it Irish Drams? No, it's not Irish Drams, obviously. Irish Malts. It's it's an online thing, but they're in the south of Ireland. So I bought 2 bottles from Irish Malts using using the British leg of their website, which means that they basically, their website can be split. If you tell them that you live in Ireland, which I do technically live in the island of Ireland, I could order, and Tony, I know, bought his as in just by, when you go into the website, I'm making this terribly convoluted, I know, but I'm trying to explain it as I make it up, or not make it up in my head, as I work it out in my head. If you go into their website and it asks you where you're from, and you say Ireland, and you will register as an Irish address because you're still on the island of Ireland. He ordered his and had 2 bottles or a bottle, whatever, how many he had ordered, and had it within a couple of days. I think I waited 4 weeks for mine, 3 to 4 weeks for mine. And the reason why I waited this time was, now get this, the whiskey was produced 40 minutes up the road, went to Irish Malts, they got their amount of it to sell on. I bought mine from theirs, having logged into the website, being a British citizen, living in Britain, which I do, technically. They had to send the bottles to the UK, to the mainland UK, to get the UK stamp put on them, and then they get sent back to me in Northern Ireland as the buyer. So they were made 40 minutes up the road, sent down to Ireland, posted to the UK, and then posted back to me. As I say, it took 3 to 4 weeks, I think. It's just something that, but oh man, it just, in my head, it's utter nonsense, and I'm sure it happens everywhere. I'm sure it does, but because they have to go through these, it has to. But yeah, just couldn't. I couldn't. I mean, you see, this is the thing, Luna. It's the confusion of the thing that, as I say, technically, yes, I live in Ireland, and technically now, well, even more so now. I mean, I carry an Irish passport and a British passport, so if I didn't realize this until Tony actually reminded me, that he had actually signed into the website via the Irish one, but it's nonsense. But it worked itself out. I got the balls and I really enjoyed them. I'm gonna wrap this up shortly. I just want to step into the chat here and see what's going on. Tony, uh, yes, and yet again, I mean, as I say, Amazon. And the Somerton thing, yes, I mean, so I actually signed on to Somerton for a while. I felt really guilty because great club, love what they're doing, but you know how it is. Mm-hmm. And Tony summed that up very well there to do with, by saying it's all to do with the UK taxman, which is pretty much what it was. Of course, it was. I mean, the problem, the problem lay in that Bushmills. It wasn't a problem, but Bushmills released that to the Irish market, even though Bushmills Distillery technically is part of Great Britain, or whatever way you want to explain it, on the island of Ireland. And this is where the mess lies. And this is where, this opens up a great, great bag of worms, can of worms with regards to where Brexit went wrong. But we're not going to get into that, are we? Mm-hmm. This is the thing, Luna, since Brexit, yes, post Brexit, there's special regulations. Technically, Northern Ireland is still part of the EU, where import export is concerned. We are still technically part of the EU. It's I'm trying to think of a great way to put it. It's a balls up. I think that's actually a bloody good way to put it. It's just a complete balls up. Anyway, listen, I'm going to make this one last me. There's 10 past 10. That was that was quite a brief. Well, I'm back to what I used to do. I mean, my Monday malt samples were always a fairly brief thing. I try to keep them brief. As I say, it's a school night. It's back to what Monday malt samples was about for me originally. Whenever I was fit to do it once a fortnight, where it's just getting an opportunity to get into some of those samples that you guys have sent me, and just have a real dip into them and get a chance to drink them and let you know what I think. And I'm going to try. I'm going to try and get. But now I did say to my patrons that that it's going to be a bit of a mess. These live feeds will probably be a bit sporadic for me for the first couple of months here, because I'm still trying to get my head around this new job, etc. But I want to try. The ideal for me is to try and get back to every other week, every couple of weeks. But I'll see how things work out. I have got plans. I've got other guests lined up. Some surprise guests, some things which are going to work around reviews that I'm doing. So I've got a plan for the way my reviews are going to go this year, etc. So yeah, it's good. It's good to be back. Actually, I really enjoy these wee relaxed ones where I can. I do. I feel as if I'm just blethering about stuff. But if you are quite willing to stay in here and listen to me, I'm quite happy to just sit here and blether away. But listen, for now, thank you all for joining in. It's been great. It really has. It's been so nice to get back. And a couple of really nice drams. Really enjoyed that Irish coffee stout more than I thought I was going to. Appreciate that, Tony. That Ardnamurchan. Yeah. If you can get your hands on a bottle of it still, it's certainly one which you'll benefit from, you'll enjoy. I'm convinced of that. Yeah, wild mint. Still getting wild mint in it. Listen, guys, as I say, thank you so much for joining in. It's been it's a pleasure to get back in 2021, and you know where I'm at. Don't leave me out. I'll be around. I'll try and get back into these live chats with other folk, etc. Until then, probably another 3 weeks, I should be back for another live feed. Hope. Reviews will keep coming as they do. Thanks for joining me, guys. Here's to your good health. Cheers.